Let's get ready to rumble. We'll act like I did that longer than I already did. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. We got 300 of you already here. Deborah, Amy, Adeline, Cynthia, and I are here. We are ready to take you to the next level and then dish you off to success. You're going to have a great day tomorrow. I can guarantee that you will feel more confident because of Fiveables crams this week. All right. Be proud of yourselves. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to jump right into some slides that are going to lead us through some content review. All right. If anytime you want something to say, drop it in the chat and the team will be in the chat to help you out. All right, here we go. That's not the right slide to be on. Boom. Hit slideshow. I always narrate this part.
All right, BJ's going to run these games. There's some really fun review games to get you guys started. I'm going to be in the chat, just like peppering a bunch of extra information to kind of like help you make connections between what's on the screen. And yeah, also remember that there is a cram packet and this information is in your cram packet. So don't worry about writing anything down. This information is already available to you on the Cram Hub for you to study later. All right, I'll head to the backstage and I'll be in the chat for a little while.
All right, good times. First of all, we are going to try to handle your questions throughout the evening, so keep them going. We will either answer your questions live on mic, or we'll be answering your questions in the chat. First, I do want to comment that a student stated about 2 minutes ago, I don't remember anything. And if somebody said to me, tell me what you teach in AP World, I would stutter. I would stamp through what I'm about to say, because like I teach everything. I don't know where to begin. So when you feel you don't remember things, what I want to tell you is if you walk outside, you open up the door, you step outside, you can tell if it's cold, if it's hot, if it's rainy, if it's sunny, but you don't know the temperature. You don't know how many inches. You don't know the barometer reading. And why do I say it like that? AP World is not always about knowing the specific fact. How do you spell Deng Xiaoping? It's about getting history. And the only way to get history is to have taken world history, written the essays, analyzed the documents, come to Fiveable, use it for its review materials, and go. Please understand, I know what it's like to read a question on the AP test and say, I don't remember learning this, because I'm not kidding you. I don't remember teaching this. College Board knows that. They put things on the test so you can place it in the context, cause, effect, time period. Please. It's not always about Quizlet knowledge. So with that being said, one thing I know from students is they do want to know some of the bigger factoids that could be on the test. So tonight we put together factoids. Last night, SAQ and LEQ. The night before, the DBQ. Tonight, it's just time, one last chance to go over some major topics. So do know that you can access our review packet down below at the link. There is not a need to take great notes. There's a lot of blanks to answer on this part of the review guide. All right, here we go. So this is a cram session focusing on the super review and a variety of AP style prompts. Please follow us at Think Liveable on social media. Our crew is here tonight. We're going to be largely in the chat at different times. The chat is the best place to put your questions. Please remember some of the norms we've been going over, like taking the notes, using the Cram Hub, using the chat, and of course the Q&A tab, but the chat is probably where it's at. This goes for every night, but do know that you've been doing a great job. Be supportive, be patient, be kind. You have been nothing but that during the chat. You've been supportive of Amy and I, all the students, and each other. So I can't even tell you how good you make me feel. All right, enough of that. So I guess I don't know if they've drawn this. I don't know if it is if people have money in their hand yet, but don't forget, if you share your fiveable feelings and the cram feelings, just use at fiveable crams and tag at think fiveable, and you might get some hooked up. So first, let's go ahead and do our super review. The super review will be followed by some writing skills, some prompt practice, some quizzing, and last minute hits. We got to admit, we have tons of stuff tonight. The slideshow's like 150 slides. We're going to do what we can do. All right. And by the way, Ron Jones, if you skipped Unit 9 on purpose, it's all good. We don't know if we'll get to Samosa tonight, but we'll try to make some time for that. All right. Don't know what blue screen means. I hope it's not a bad thing. I see people are going for the Knicks, but I'm from Philly, so I don't always agree. Right? Looks like people are getting locked in. Let's go. So round one, you don't have to take notes. If you're using the review packet effectively, you'll notice it's fill in the blank and a word bank. And I wish life was fill in the blank with the word bank. I think that would just be life. That'd be golden there. So first round, who am I? Important founders and builders. The concept is who has built nations, societies, and cultures. So do not, and I'm going to say this like 9 times, don't use the chat. This is not a place to prove to everybody you knew the answer first, because I want everybody thinking, brainstorming, process of eliminating. Don't know if that actually made any sense. So here we go. This leader emerged as a leader of Egypt around the early 1800s. He was an Ottoman who helped Egypt break away from the Ottoman Empire. While in charge of Egypt, he realized that the Egyptians can benefit from being part of a global economy, thus producing, you're doing it, don't do it. Joe Biden is probably more like it. Right. Cotton, by the way. I wanted to say cotton. Number two. Number two is an absolute monarch. And if you're ever thinking of an absolute monarch, this is the best exemplar. They love this. His nickname is the Sun King. He built the Palace of Versailles. He also engaged in land and naval wars in the Atlantic and in the Americas. This is a veteran of the Long March. He came after Mao Zedong as the leader of communist China. However, though a communist by party and by name, he was a reformer. Some of you don't know much about this guy. You didn't get to him in your class. This man helped create the one-child policy, which is state authority about population. He created special economic zones where foreign companies could have better trading privileges and created the responsibility system. The responsibility system is one of my favorite things to teach. What happens is you give the government a certain quota. If you make bricks, you give the government a certain quota of bricks. And then anything above that, you get to sell for a profit in communist China. Do you see? Communist China by the 1980s was breaking every Marxian Maoian rule, except for one. You don't allow free speech. Thus, he led the massacre of the protesters at Tiananmen Square. That was a lot of lecturing, but this is a guy you may not have gotten to. And listen, you can study him and China's foreign policy and economic policy and better understand capitalism and communism. All right, let's move on. This is one I had to actually tell my students today when I did a similar activity that I never taught them. You can poo-poo me like, boo. Nope, he never came out of my mouth. However, he is relative. So during the late 30s and 40s, you're going to see that South Asia is divided. South Asia is divided between Hindus and Muslims, both pushing for independence. Gandhi wanted a free, independent, and united South Asia. This guy wanted a minority state for Muslims. He had, and many did, have concern that if South Asia is granted independence from the British, that the majority Hindu state would persecute the minority Muslims. And he won. He will eventually be sworn in as the first governor general of an independent Pakistan. Number 5. I can't make all the jokes here, but he is literally the only daimyo shogun that I make my students accountable to know. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, I teach him. Oda Nobunaga, I teach him. But he is the shogun that I teach. So remember, as a daimyo, they compete for power. The most powerful daimyo is the shogun. Once a shogun, you now have a family rule. That family rule is a shogunate. There we go. So this shogun created a very feudal society that was quite united as a territory. Now, out of fear of change, foreigners, both trade and faith, this and his descendants decided to close a lot of access to Europeans. Now, this is very indicative of what was happening in East Asia. Both the Ming and this shogunate closed down their societies from Europe specifically because of the fear of imperialism, intervention, global trade, and what it could do. Ready? Number 6. So this leader expanded the Mughal Empire. He did it by conquest. So let's not, everybody, this document with all the fill in the blanks where I will give you the answers is located right in Crowdcast. At least it is for me. Now, the thing is, this Mughal is indicative of being a gunpowder empire leader. He was an expander of the landmass we call Mughals. However, as a leader, he was also known as being tolerant. College Board, AP, ETS, they all love when rulers are tolerant though they are also violent. I mean, the best example is the Mongols. The Mongols were violent and ferocious, but they tolerated belief systems and didn't promote any one particular one. So when Akbar emerges, he's doing the same thing. He's tolerating the Hindu majority. He's tolerating the Jesuit missionaries that are coming there after the backlash to the Reformation in Europe. And he does a lot of things such as eliminates the jizya, or the tax on non-Muslims. Ooh, that slide's wrong. Eliminated the tax on non-Muslims. Number 7. Now, this leader did not lead between 1200 and today. He is actually from 550 BCE. I'm going to give the answers after I go over all 1 through 15. All right. So it really helps if you have the document. If somebody could post the document in the chat, just so everybody knows that they're just following along a fill in the blank document. I don't want anybody having extra anxiety because they think they have to write all this down, like I said earlier. So he is going to be a founder of belief system. So China was in a state of conflict and chaos, and he promoted a philosophy based off of the 5 relationships, like ruler to subject, father to son, husband to wife, right? He also promoted filial piety. Filial piety is that enormous amount of respect due to your elders. When you take the 5 relationships and filial piety and eventually the civil service exams, you're going to have a society that promotes stability. Number 8, another founder of a belief system. Oh, sorry, he'll be later. Sorry. This is a leader of a West African state who becomes famous for being rich and also traveling to Mecca and Medina on the Hajj. So, as a Mali leader promoting Islam, promoting trade, he also becomes a builder, building mosques and libraries in an emerging city called Timbuktu. Number 9, he's a long-reigning Ottoman sultan. Now, the Ottoman Empire, the quote-unquote sick man of Europe, wasn't always sick. They had this leader nicknamed the Lawgiver, the Magnificent. He expanded quite deep into Eastern Europe. A lot of, like, for example, Bosnia and what used to be Yugoslavia, highly influenced by the expansion of the Ottomans under his rule. He is the only Ottoman leader I demand my students to learn. Of all the years of the Ottoman Empire, I tell my kids, 1. That's all. So don't stress yourself. Number 10. This leader, I think you probably already knew before he entered your course. He followed Vladimir Lenin as the leader of the new Soviet Union. He's different than Lenin, I would say different than a Karl Marx figure, because he was less of an ideologue doing things because of the idea and more of a totalitarian, doing things for the benefit of him and his nationalist beliefs in Russia. So a real totalitarian dictator. A great example is that he makes an allegiance with fascist Hitler, right? Nazi-Soviet non-aggression pact. Years later, we're allies with him during World War II, and then we're foes with him during that Cold War, that tension in the Truman era of American politics, where you're going to have a divided Germany. You're going to have a Berlin airlift. You're going to have the American containment policy. And of course, you're going to have the Korean War. Truman supporting South Korea, this leader supporting North Korea. Number 11. This is going back, but it gives good context to this region. He ruled the eastern portion of the Roman Empire. He helped build this Roman Empire to the east, where it was more Greek, where it was more Orthodox. He helped rebuild the city of Constantinople and helped develop the Hagia Sophia. He codified Roman law under his own name. Number 12, considered by believers to be the last prophet of Allah. His revelations, what he said, what he recited, is literally the words of God, meaning the Quran, meaning recitation, is him reciting God's true words in Arabic, meaning God's true will. So you can imagine, though this is around 600 CE, his beliefs are going to be very popular. They're going to be well respected in a society that had already had Jews and Christians who are also people of the book, the dhimmi, the people of a similar Abrahamic code. Wow, I could really just teach this all day, but I can't. Listen, you should know this one. I don't even need to read it. The word communism's on the screen. Communist Manifesto's on the screen. You should be hitting the keyboard on that for those who've been hitting the keyboard tonight. Karl Marx saw, if you will, the horrors of the Industrial Revolution. Let's talk, or I'll talk. So you have The Wealth of Nations, published in 1776. Capitalism, rah, rah, rah. You have an imperialism going on and the Industrial Revolution going on. In short, certain powers are becoming richer than the day before. Where you see squalor is either abroad in the developing world or in the actual urban cities of the West. And that to me is pretty intense. Like in a society that had the Industrial Revolution and was seemingly taking over the world, there was extreme poverty in London, in Berlin. And that is what Karl Marx was reading and writing about. He saw poverty where there should be wealth and said something needs to be fixed. Thus, many consider him to be the father of communism. Number 14, on the opposite side of the father of communism in the 1800s, go back to the 1600s, and you have the father of Western liberalism. This idea that we are all born free, we are without chains, we have the right to life, liberty, and property, which doesn't sound that good. So we clean it up and say pursuit of happiness. My last one before I give you the answers. He unified a German-speaking people in around 1870. You got to understand this. Italy, I said that purposely, and Germany, I said that purposely, did not necessarily exist in the states that they see today around 1870. They didn't. We often think of nationalism as what Americans faced. We fought the British. Or what Bolivar faced. He fought the Spanish. But how about the German-speaking people who ate German, danced German, drank German, dressed German, who wanted to be part of a German state? That type of nationalism was brewing. But this leader, believing in realpolitik, truly believed that the only way to advance Germany's interests was through acting in Germany's best interest. He calls the Berlin Conference to share Africa because he knew the only way for his emerging nascent nation to compete was for them to negotiate the future of Africa. All right, that's 15. Now it's time for the answer key. When I give it and you get it right, feel free to say yay in the chat. When you get it wrong, you're welcome to ask questions. Muhammad Ali. King Louis the 14th. King Louis the 16th is the dude that lost his head during the French Revolution. And really, King Louis the 16th lost his head because of what King Louis the 14th had done decades earlier. I'm seeing a lot of yays and woos. Deng Xiaoping. After your AP World exam, please study Deng Xiaoping. He explains why China today is communist in name only. Preach it, Dramby, preach it. Muhammad Ali Jinnah. By the way, you can always reference him on the AP exam as Jinnah. Yes, Aaron Feeman, you really should continue learning after the AP exam. Tokugawa Ieyasu. Now, some kids are like, I don't know how to pronounce or spell. Any AP reader will tell you spelling doesn't count. If you spell Hitler with an S and Tokugawa, I mean, just imagine how you could butcher that name. Tokugawa. Actually, it's really phonetic. Maybe Ieyasu, you say I-E-A. That's all you write. Tokugawa Aya. And you're like, oh no, I didn't spell it right. Now you start crying. You do not need to know how to spell their names. In fact, if we think you meant Tokugawa Ieyasu, just by writing Tokugawa, you're going to get the credit. You would be surprised by how kind we are when grading yours. And it's also funny when you can't spell things. Sorry. Akbar the Great. This is a good time. I would say Akbar the Great is more important to learn than Shah Jahan, the dude that helped build the Taj Mahal. One would say, but the Taj Mahal bigger. But the Taj Mahal was built when like the Mughals were at their peak. And I don't contend that Shah Jahan did anything unique. But then there's Akbar, who promoted tolerance and learning about different societies. He welcomed philosophers and religious leaders to come to his court and chop it up with him, just chat up. And like that is an anomaly in a nation that had a Islamic leader. Anytime there's tolerance by the West or the East, college boards like, oh, please, tolerance. I mean, if you don't know what to say, talk about tolerance, talk about trade, talk about champa rice. These are just things. Number 7 is Confucius. If you don't know what to say about China, say something about Confucianism still existing. Just say the civil service exams are still being used because there's a chance you're right. Unless you're talking about the Mongols or Deng Xiaoping. Mansa Musa, there is a great crash course on Mansa Musa. Anytime I use a John Green episode, I give it a shout out because I used to use them all. No offense, but I phased them out. But this one's good. Suleiman. That's the blue mosque down below. It's my favorite mosque. Stalin, that's my favorite stash. Justinian, he's before this, but he's indicative of the Byzantine and the orthodoxy of Eastern Europe that is about to fall at the beginning of this time period. Muhammad, we don't show him. Karl Marx, that is exactly what I want to look like at age 71. Maybe not before that. John Locke and Otto von Bismarck. So, how did you do? Out of 15, how did you do? 14's great. Woo is great. Lots of W's. Okay, 1 out of 15, not feeling good. I hear you. Jordan, I hear you. We're going to have to start working on our guesstimating. Yeah. We're doing all right. Now, we're going to go to round 2. Round 2 is going to deal with some geography. How do you all feel about geography? Sometimes kids that are like AP would crush geography. Weak. No. Meh. My students always say, I forgot that blank was in blank. Like literally, oh, I didn't know China was in East Asia. I thought it was Southeast Asia. And that's when I say, I failed you. Google Maps failed you. So let's go to this. This is College Board's regions map. It is in the course and exam description that you can download from College Board's website. So you will see College Board will reference places most likely by region. How did change happen in East Asia? Identify a similarity between East Asia and North Africa. That question wouldn't literally read like that. So, East Africa is China. That's a duh, but also Japan and Korea. Vietnam falls down and is part of Southeast Asia. The Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, they're going to be part of Southeast Asia. South Asia, not Southeast Asia, is basically India until we see the emergence of Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. You can see that the Middle East is not just on Asia, it is also Afro-Asia. It also includes Egypt. What is Europe? Okay, so Russia, Australia, Europe often are sometimes clumped together more like the global north, because Australia, though its own continent and country, is highly influenced by the West. So, going over to the Americas, as soon as you go south of the United States, you've entered Latin America. That is Mexico all the way through South America. I reference it all as Latin America. If I wanted to demarcate Central America, a term that's not actually ever used anymore, but I grew up with the term Central America, we would reference that as Mesoamerica. North Africa. So North Africa, in my opinion, is that it is an Arab Islamic dominated region per our course. Obviously, before Islam, it wasn't. But what happens is early in 12, 13, all that in our learning, we learned that the Umayyad and the Abbasid spread the people, the language, and the faith of Islam. Thus, genetically, North Africans are different than sub-Saharan Africans. So, good time to not overly generalize about Africa. Now, I have stayed away from the chat. I see Dr. Posa is all over it, which is great. Thank you, Promise. I appreciate our students that are monitoring the chat. All right. So now that we've done this map, we are going to do the next pages in the review guide, which I'm going to go over. Maybe if you can't access the review guide for some reason, you can screenshot this, grab your phone, and take a picture. I am going to give you the answer. I would like you to match numbers 1 through 5 with A through E. Yes, I'm going to give you some time. This is the time I'm going to ask for a cup of coffee. Manchurians would be East Asia. The Mongols would be, oh geez, East Asia? If you said Central Asia, that wouldn't be wrong. I would feel that they would like double dip. All right. I'm texting this to the family group chat. I'll let you know how it goes. Coffee? Question mark. My family's kind of annoyed with me working down here every night and like screaming at the computer. All right, I'm now going to go to the next 5. The next 5, you're going to have like numbers 6 through 10, and you're going to label them I through Roman numerals. All right, we're going to come back and go over all of these. Boom. Don't read what Theo wrote. Don't do it. Somebody named themselves hello. Stop giving the answers. Nah, Sophia, I'm going to eat cookies. Last night I had 6 double stuffed cookies, and that's not healthy. I'm just eating my feelings. I get anxious for my students, so get nervous. Quipu, there it is. Somebody was going to ask. Gotcha. We'll take care of that. Kylie, don't be lost. I'm here. Just keep looking at me. Oh, that's why we're going to go over this. Yasmin, later on. The yarn thing. Sounds good to me, Elizabeth. No, Rion. They call me Mr. Dramby. I actually have a last name. Not funny, Skylin. All right. So here are the answers, and then we'll go over the harder ones. Bam. There is your answer key. I think everything is used, and everything is used just once. Billy James. It's my grandfather's name and my uncle's name, William James. Jake, I can drink coffee at 10 o'clock. I'm good. Notice it's not here yet. And I don't hear it brewing. I'm going to spam my family chat now. There we go. It's just that time of night, you know? All right. I'm now going to go back. So, number one, the caste system should have told you Hinduism, which should have told you South Asia. Chinapas and human sacrifice and the tribute system is all 100% Aztecs. Aztecs are actually called the Mexica, which is Mexico, which is Mesoamerica. The next one's probably hard. You have to think about it. Where are Buddhists, Muslims, Hindus, and spice all located? And that is from Unit 2, where you were learning about things such as cinnamon and nutmeg and such coming through the Indian Ocean trade from Southeast Asia. So let's talk about number 4. The Inca did mummify. The Inca did have a counting tabulation system called quipu. It involved tying beads in a way to mark a transaction or a memory. It wasn't a written language. In fact, the Inca never had a written language, which is one of their weaknesses. Finally, Mita for number 4. Mita is awesome. I'm going to stop. Mita is a brilliant way of subjugating your people. So, what the Inca did in a socialist way, we call it Incan socialism, was you didn't get paid by the government and you didn't pay the Inca government a tax with money. You paid a labor tax. So just imagine you were taken or asked or given from your village to work building roads for the Inca. You did it for months and then you went home. That was your obligation to your government, your country. It was your tax. It wasn't slavery. They never bought and sold you. It was not chattel slavery. It was forced labor as a way of paying tax. And I'm going to blow your mind. I have to pay my taxes, and to pay my taxes, I have to do labor to make money. And then I have to do labor to make money that I give the government. Maybe not for income tax, but for my property tax in Pennsylvania. So no matter what, the government has me working if I live in my house. Deep Thoughts and Snide Opinions by B.J. Dranby. And Vikings and Orthodox Christianity's Eastern Europe. Let's do the next one. Boop. No. Supported Buddhism, feudalism invaded by the Mongols. Please be East Asia. That's the Yuan dynasty. Rise of Islam attacked by Christians, Crusades invaded by the Mongols, the sacking of the House of Wisdom, the end of Baghdad, and the rise of the Ilkhanate. Rival of Islam, city-states, trade, and exotic golds. Oh, okay. This one's a little bit harder. This is East Africa, W-E, West, East. East Africa is like Great Zimbabwe. It's the Swahili coast. Numerous city-states united by language, united by trade, but not necessarily an empire. Arrival of Islam, trade, salt, 3 major empires. So the 3 major empires are Ghana, the Mali, and the Songhai, which is the last of the major 3 empires at the same location in West Africa. The Songhai, their demise will eventually be the slave trade. When you engage in the slave trade and you trade away your men, your 20-year-old labor force, it won't behoove you in the long run. Attacked by Arabs and Vikings, feudalism and manorialism, that is going to be West Europe. That is going to be Ireland, England, that's France. So, I'm not trying to be mean. These regions do matter. You don't always have to know the country. You just need to know the region and say, oh, West Africa, Mansa Musa, Ibn Battuta, slavery. Hey, listen, the one thing I've learned about the AP curriculum, if you can get it, and now this sounds bad, sometimes generalizing, stereotyping, categorizing helps your brain. If you can just picture West Africa and say, well, that's Timbuktu, that's Mansa Musa, that's Islam coming, that's gold, that's Hajj, that's slavery, not related, but it really just helps. So I don't know if you could dive into that. Those are the answers. If anybody needs to take a picture. Oh, Abigail. Abigail, shout out to France and got some likes. That's nice. I'm looking through the chat. I don't know. Sometimes I look through the chat and I see things I don't want to see. But we're looking. Connor B, that's rude. Want a refund. Connor B, come on. Come on. Teamwork. All right. Oh no. Regions again. Are you got to be kidding me? It is 7:47 Eastern. No coffee. So this regions is going to be hard. I'm going to ask you to take all the powers on the left and match them with all the regions on the right, which means sometimes the Abbasid Caliphate are on more than one region. Maddie, it may seem impossible. It's the attempt that matters. Because then I'll go over it. I'll give you a moment on this one. Love you, Connor. Yeah, Kylie, you got this. No one brought me anything. Go for it, Charlotte. You never know. You might get contextualization. Harley, there's no reason to be nervous for something that you prepared for enough. Just take the test, move on. It's just a test. And if I were talking to somebody from College Board, I'd say the same thing. We've worked hard. Some of us worked harder than others. Some of us are just generally smart. Some of us are good writers. Just take the test tomorrow. Avery, what I usually tell my students tonight, which by the way, I get off this call at 10 p.m., I would tell them to go to bed. I would study one thing you think you need help with. And Raisa, I think you should get a full ride for school. I told my students today, like, find one thing you need help with. If it's Unit 3, then yeah, study Feivel's materials, watch Heimler Unit 3, just study Unit 3 and go to bed. If it's essay writing, then you can go to College Board and see the release samples they have. We obviously had a live night just on the DBQ. You can't jam everything in. I mean, we're doing a cram session. That's good enough. If any of my students are listening tonight and at 10 o'clock they get off this and went to bed, I'd be good. Harper, I encourage you to eat breakfast. At our house, when we have to use our brains, we eat eggs or mung beans. I have a son who's allergic to eggs, so he eats mung beans, which is like fake egg. Really good, really good. I do tell my students to bring a lot of calories, not protein, to jam in their mouths right between the multiple choice in the SAQ and the DBQ and the LEQ. You will get a break. And that is when you eat 2 Snickers bars, unless you're my son with allergies. You want to have calories that are carbs, that are sugars, because you're about to write a DBQ, and the DBQ will take energy. Some of you are making me hungry. All right. I think by this point, you either gave up or I've distracted you enough. Here is your answers. You ready? This is when you're going to take that screenshot. This is when you're going to get your phone out. Bam. Again, we already drew some of this, that Mali is West Africa. Like literally, when you think of West Africa, think of the Mali Empire and slavery. Mr. Dramby, no shush. College Board only uses Australia like twice in its entire curriculum. It doesn't sit there and talk about New Zealand over and over. It talks about the Maori. So sometimes in the College Board curriculum, regions pop in and then they pop out. And I'm sorry. Pennsylvania is not in the College Board curriculum, but I still know it's important. Walker, a hacienda is not the encomienda system. A hacienda should be considered a plantation or a manor, just in the Americas. If you're thinking of the encomienda system that uses haciendas to force the labor of those living on it. It's not your B. All right. I was talking to Dr. Poser earlier because I always love number 7 because people think of Portugal as that like little baby country on the Iberian Peninsula. Oh no, but it had Brazil. No, people, there's caffeine in this. No. The Portuguese were a trading post empire. The Spanish were a trading post empire. And as a trading post empire, they had little cities all over. From the Strait of Malacca to Macau next to Canton in China, they were everywhere, holding some cities in and around India. A couple of years ago, there was a DBQ on the Portuguese Empire where you didn't need to know a lot about the Portuguese Empire. But I do tell people that the Portuguese Empire was a trading post empire. All right. We need to move on. I hope you got the answers. I hope that you learned your general gist of region by name, because College Board won't, I guess I got to make sure I say this. Amy, clean it up if I'm wrong. The College Board will rarely use the names of countries on the exam. They use broader geographic terms, which is good for you. I'll give an example. If they say East Asia and the Cold War, keep focused, lock in. East Asia and the Cold War, you get to use the Korean War, Korea, and Mao Zedong and China. If they say East Asia and Southeast Asia, now you get to use the Vietnam War. So the more regions indicated, the more opportunities, more options you have. Thank you, Rian. Locked in. So here's the Abbasid Caliphate. They did have Sunni and Shia regions. They helped develop their capital away from Damascus to Baghdad, the House of Wisdom. They were a learned people. They took the the numerical system of India, and they brought it to Europe. So the Europeans called it Arabic numerals. That's AP World. The fact that we call it Arabic numerals and it's from India, I would be upset. I would be annoyed. I love the topic of the Abbasid Caliphate. I think the concept you need to understand is it was a blending of political and religious rule. It thrived. It was part of the trading system. It knocked on the future of what will eventually be the Ottomans. It dominates North Africa. The Umayyad Caliphate before it, the Umayyad dynasty before it, also had a swath of North Africa going all the way up to Al-Andalus. I'm circling it right here. I don't know if you can see my thing. Al-Andalus is the Iberian Peninsula, which had a large number of Muslims living on it. The Tokugawa shogunate is pretty famous because it united the feudal regions, the feudal daimyos of Japan. The Song dynasty, obviously there's a variety of dynasties in China. Every time dynasties got bigger, they struggled. The Song were a Chinese dynasty of largely ethnic Chinese, to be replaced by the Mongol, the Yuan dynasty, and eventually after the Ming, the Manchurian Qing dynasty. So East Asia to an American is Chinese when it's a lot more diverse. You know, you have different dialects, you have Cantonese, Mandarin being spoken. You obviously have people from Manchuria who are now part of China. I love it. And yes, there is a song you should learn. The Mongols, the largest land-based contiguous empire, but it wasn't a successful, how do I say this, empire, because it expanded and it broke apart. It did do good things like spread religion, increase trade, increase some tolerance, but it also created regional tensions. The House of Baghdad is sacked, tensions with Kiev when it gets destroyed. Obviously, the Chinese are going to be under the Yuan dynasty. Cool. The Ottoman Empire, what I love about this slide about the Ottomans is that the Ottomans were North African, Middle Eastern, and in many ways, Eastern European, all the way up through Romania to Hungary to Austria. So we can't ever belittle the Ottomans. Now, many of you, when you study the Ottoman Empire, you might have studied them in context of World War I, where they were the sick man of Europe and on their decline. But at Suleiman's high point, they were a very large and powerful land-based empire. Devshirme system, the Janissary, millets, all good stuff. Dr. Posa had a whole night's presentation on just the Ottomans. There's Mali. There's Great Zimbabwe. There's the Spanish in red. Notice they held the Philippines. There was a famous Spanish sailor who went there. He died on the Philippine Islands. Does anybody know what Spanish sailor died on the Philippine Islands? Magellan, yes. So he did not circumnavigate the world. And blue is the Portuguese. Yes, the Portuguese were not as big as the Spanish, but did hold numerous territories on different continents. All right, round 4. I'm going to go to the adult chat. We have an I'm just reading some of the chat that we write behind. We write chats behind your back. Stop. Oh, all right. Dr. Posa dropped something in there, and I do want to talk about this. Actually, it makes a lot of sense right before round 4. You're going to see words possibly on the College Board exam about consolidation. To consolidate is to bring together. Like if my family was sitting in front of me and everybody had chicken nuggets, I would consolidate the chicken nuggets by taking a couple chicken nuggets from everybody. That's consolidation. In history, we use the term consolidation to bring typically political power. We consolidate power. We create bureaucracies, civil service exams, Janissary corps. We conquer, attack, kill. So consolidation politically can be done in many ways. Now, there have been questions about legitimizing. Legitimizing means to justify. So, how do I justify my consolidation? How do I legitimize my consolidation? The answer is faith. The consolidation maybe of the Crusades justified by Pope Urban II's call. The actual Ottomans were founded by Osman. Osman the Great was a great warrior who fought in the name of Allah. He would have been what we would consider to be a bit of a jihadist by today's terminology. He was fighting for God, fighting for Allah. People followed him. Eventually, his descendants will have a more stabilized bureaucratic state, but not originally. So to legitimize your consolidation, sometimes we legitimize our consolidation by making more money for the people, by building things for the people. The Great Wall of China consolidated Chinese rule politically and militarily, but also legitimized their public works. They hired people, they paid people, sometimes not all of them. So those are just a couple things. I haven't monitored the chat for a while. That was off stream there. I see a lot of you are stuck on the words that I gave earlier, and I gave them purposely. I don't know if it's all been answered, but you really need to know those words. The Ottomans had the Devshirme system to go grab future Janissaries. Janissaries are elite warriors. And they politically ran a bureaucratic state that allowed regional autonomy, which was usually religiously based. We call them millets. So I am so sorry for those who are a little bit behind. I think it's beautiful. Dr. Posa did a great video presentation on this a week ago. All right, round 4, art and architecture. We're back to the review guide. In the review guide, there's going to be a place for you to write your answers. I'm asking you that if this piece of art was on the exam, would you generally know what country, religion, society, people created it? So what you're going to try to do is generalize what people made the art and architecture. Sometimes you're going to say Muslims, or maybe you're going to say Ottomans. Just make sure you're trying to say something. Here we go. I don't want to talk through this, but the script might help. The rug might help. The minarets might help. Number 2. The dude on the far right, sitting in yellow. Yellow is the color of peace, by the way, my Buddhists. Please, we've talked about him tonight. You see down below the red fort. You see Fata Per Sikri. And of course, you see the building in the top left, which does have minarets on it. I'm obviously not saying that. Number 3, I laugh at this one because I have some really smart kids, really smart. And watching their face like, oh, what the heck's that? Yes, these visuals are from Europe, which gets very little play in AP World History because you can take AP Euro. Just like American history is part of a larger context, we don't learn about the 7 Years' War in great detail. Number 4. Oh, come on. This is the one I teach this like a champ. I teach it like a champ. I find this so interesting. The tribute system, brilliant. It leads to a centralizing of city-states through fear. Oh. Cool. 5. Chinampas are not champa. Do we need to write that down? So my one son's mowing the lawn. My one son's at the gym. Where's Melissa? Where's Melissa? I'm just going to move on. Go for this one. I think that the one in the middle top is the one that would help me the most. This is number 5. Right, Ron. Sit next to Ron during the test. Number 6. In the middle is somebody I teach. I think a lot of your teachers might have addressed him, but it might not have gotten a lot of play. Number 7. He's mowing the lawn at 8 because he chose not to mow the lawn before 8. Welcome to having a senior. Simon Bolivar, K. Simon Bolivar. This one's a little bit harder. Some of your teachers taught the geographic location in the top left. No. Somebody did say it. Somebody just said it again. What? See what I said there? Got it? Yeah. Number 9. Now, this is like at the beginning of the course, and some teachers skip this. But I do like I used to teach this well. I bet Amy used to teach this well. When AP World used to be a full course going all the way back to the beginning of mankind and going to, 2000, I used to crush this topic. Yeah, it is Justinian. J-Dog. And number 10. There's some cliche things there like porcelain, there's forbidden thing, there's big walls. They're pretty great. All right. And stop writing Confucianism everywhere. There's your answer key. Only things you need to know are things in red. I wouldn't overly break it down. I did this at the beginning of class when we got online at 7, an hour and 11 minutes ago. I said sometimes when you walk outside, you just know it's a nice day, even though you don't know the temperature. So sometimes it's like Central Mesoamerican. You just don't know which empire. And that's okay. You don't always need to know the specific things. You see my face, right? You see my face, right? She is the greatest person. Everybody in the chat, say thank you, Melissa. Go ahead. Say thank you, Melissa. There you go. Oh, I got coffee, people. I got coffee and I got 2 more hours. We here. She is the queen and I am not the king. I am more of the jester. So for anybody thought I was dragging, now we're going to go at it. It's 1 L, 2 S's. She gets a little upset about it. I love her too. All right. Round 5 now. I didn't do round 5 with my kids today. If I did round 5 with my kids, they would have stood up and walked out because they're like, I know nothing. BJ, Mr. Dranby, you make me feel stupid. All right, here we go. Round 5, I'm going to make you match dates. You're like, wait a minute. I didn't know I needed to know dates. You don't, but you need to use generalizations and common sense. If it happened before Columbus or if it happened after Columbus. If it happened before the American Revolution or after the American Revolution. So no, you don't need to memorize. Ready? It's time to feel bad about ourselves. Match the date to the event. Rian, not everybody actually knows that. All right. Sorry, Asher. This is the one that would have made you blow up at school. Oh, Hamilton. The only reason why we still own Disney Plus. That's my happy place. Genevieve, you don't need to know. You need to try to figure out. You may not remember it, but can you figure it out? Listen, you're going to sit at the test tomorrow and you're like, I don't know this. And College Board's going to say, I know you don't know it, but figure it out. I'm not really handy and at all masculine. I can't fix things. But if I flip over my lawnmower to fix it, I figure it out. And that's what you have to do in AP World. You need to figure it out, right, Izzy? You just gotta say, well, that's that picture's that year happened that. You're not gonna know the answer right off the bat. Yes. Yes, I love some of the comments. Yeah, I'm sorry. So you might have studied Machiavelli in maybe your English class because they made you read The Prince. Oh yeah. But he also did exist in unit 1 of the course. Um, Sometimes I'm quite Machiavellian in the sense that I put things in the review to make you review. I don't want to put things in the review that you all already know. Opium Wars. What did they fight over? Opium. What did they do? Went to war. Where was it? China? Who was it with? British? There you go. It's like you kind of just know that stuff. Now, Emery, did you really read The Prince, or did your teacher assign you each a chapter, to which you still faked it? We don't read The Prince at my school anymore, I don't think. I have 2 copies of upstairs in my classroom, 2 different translations. Here goes the answers, I hope. Go ahead. Ariana, when it stays away from the West, it stays away from the West for just reasons. For example, the French Revolution matters. But to say that the French Revolution should have 2 days, but the Taiping Rebellion shouldn't, is wrong. So what College Board does is tries to say, you need to know a little bit about a variety of things. And if you know a lot about stuff, good for you. Yeah, 9 out of 10 is exceptional. I'm okay with a 5 or 6. I mean, some of the dates are particularly mean and purposely making you on the verge of tears. But then again, that's why we're reviewing. William is still locked. Let's see what's happening at round 6. We're going to take a break after this, one of those 5-minute breaks. I got to go hug Melissa. I appreciate her. These are not founders of faiths or founders of countries or founders of societies. These are what I'm considering revolutionaries, people that change an already existing system. So for this one, I have to go faster. All right. I think Dr. Posa would agree that I might be belaboring things when I don't need to. So here we go. We're going to go to Revolutionaries Unit 6. Leader of the Bolshevik Party eventually helped seize control of Russia in a revolution. It happened in 1917. The Russians were epically, the best word, right? Epically failing World War I. Tsar Nicholas II would have been fired had they had that ability to fire him. He did come in with some left socialist ideas, but even during his time, he created the new economic policy, which did allow for some profit making. He did help support Comintern, which was bent on spreading communism to other places. So imagine if the founder of America, Thomas Jefferson, was bent on spreading democracy around the world. Maybe he did, French Revolution. But that is kind of what this guy was. Oh, Gorbachev, good guy. Number 2, I use the word Creole. Okay. Anna, I knew you were going to, yes. He is only a Bolshevik because he was winning over the Bolsheviks, not necessarily that he started it. I apologize. So he's a Creole. Number 2, I say that because unfortunately, race matters. You have peninsulares from the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, who have ruled the Americas, New Spain. And the second class citizens were Spanish descent, Spanish speaking, but they were born in Americas, thus they were Creoles. I think this figure gets a lot of play. The other day we read a little bit of the Jamaica letter. In some ways, he failed. He wanted to create a United States of South America called Gran Colombia. That failed, but independence was gained. Number 3. Everybody, let's put this one in the chat. Number 3. I love studying Mao. Jonathan Spencer has a great book on him. I'm not saying I like Mao. History's fun when you study the messed up stuff. Number 4. I don't oversell the Protestant Reformation in my class. It gets part of a day. That sounds bad. Some of your teachers might have done it for 3 days. But yes, this individual helped start a movement somewhat accidentally. This individual wanted to reform the Catholic Church. But as a devout Catholic, he thought the church was doing the church an injustice. And when he challenged the church, things got messy. And people that will follow him will create their own faiths, their own churches. They are still Christians, Jesus number 1. They just don't follow prescribed rule of the Roman Catholic Church, the Pope, and the Vatican. So you have Protestants and Catholics are both Christians, but they break apart. Number 5. Maybe you didn't do him. He's an interesting figure. He isn't played as much of a hero, especially in Western government, Western politics. He was a Muslim fundamentalist who, when the Shah, the dictator of Iran, was ruthless and seemingly not in the country's best interest, this figure was welcomed back from Paris, where he was living in exile, to help manage change in Iran. The thing is, the change he led in Iran, 1979, became to be Islamic fundamentalism. A lot of the people that pushed to get the Shah out were pushing in a decolonization way. They didn't like how the Shah obeyed America and wanted America's influence out. I'm just reading the chat. There we go. Number 6. So I'm going to call him a revolutionary because he was born a Hindu and I guess in some ways will die a Hindu. But from his teachings and his beliefs, he will go be the founder of his own faith. So, what I would do to this individual's topic. I mean, Amy and I used to teach religion and philosophy in great detail in the older version of AP World. Tree intellectual. Yes, proper name, Siddhartha Gautama, title Buddha. Number 7. So I always focus on how this figure was born middle class, went to England for a Western style education, went to South Africa to be a lawyer of British law in South Africa. So yes, an Indian educated in England enforcing British law in South Africa. Yet you and I think of him as a half-naked loincloth revolutionary. And that is because he became one. He was, as I use the term, Rosa Parked. Rosa Parked was, wouldn't give up her seat, kicked off the bus, arrested. Many of you know that story. Gandhi had the same thing happen on a train. It'll change his mentality about South Africa, and eventually he will lead a non-violent civil disobedience movement in India and South Africa first. So we call it satyagraha. It means truth force. Show your enemies truth. If you are nonviolent and you get beat, you are showing the truth of your enemy, that they are vicious, malicious, and ambitious. And that is what Dr. King did. That is what this person did. And to a degree, though a little bit more of an extremist, Nelson Mandela did as well. Number 8. Feel rude if I went quick, but I am running out of time. Yes, Christianity doesn't get a lot of play in the sense we talk about its religious fundamentalism as much, but we do need to acknowledge that the West used religion, thus the teachings of Jesus and others, as the foundation of, wait a minute, consolidation. Wait for a minute, legitimizing. Yeah, it's Jesus, Yahweh. Has anybody taken physics? AP physics? Number 10. People are going to have a hard time with spelling his name, and that's okay. You can butcher it. He was a revolutionary who said the African descendants of Haiti are due independence and control of their own rights in Haiti. So they fought against the French, and it becomes part of the Haitian Revolution. So Vladimir Lenin, Simon Bolivar, you may just say Bolivar, Mao Zedong, you may just say Mao, Martin Luther, don't call him Martin, Ayatollah Khomeini. If you say Ayatollah, there are many Ayatollahs. So Ayatollah Khomeini, K-H, Khomeini. Your spelling may be bad, but I would not call him Ayatollah. If you say the Ayatollah, most AP readers will be like, this kid gets it. But you got to walk that line. I don't want you ever saying Sultan or King. Thus, I wouldn't just call him Ayatollah. 6, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. Mohandas K. Gandhi, Mahatma, the great soul. Jesus, Isaac Newton. And I pronounce it Toussaint Louverture. Toussaint Louverture. Half-naked loincloth revolutionary. Yeah, sometimes I say things. All right. I'm going to go to the adult chat. See what I have over there. We'll be releasing all of these slides, and once these slides are released, feel free to then obviously check the answer keys then. I feel that I want to have a 5-minute break as we've been doing. So I'm going to declare a 5-minute break. I will be posting the timer up on the screen. This is the time to take a deep breath, walk away from the computer, get a drink. Do not sit on the screen in the chat. You need to get up and walk around for a few minutes. All right, we'll see you soon. Work. Thank God. Oh, my hair. I really need to get a haircut. All right, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you guys are doing well tonight. I hope that you handled the 1 hour and 30 minutes of me telling you things that are on my mind, because that's really what just happened. Don't stress if you didn't know some things that we just went over. You will be able to figure things out come tomorrow. It was meant to just hit a couple things that Amy and I and your student team felt were kind of important to just mention. And I don't know, it tells a good story. I'm seeing some lagging on my part too. I'm going to pass it now. We're going to move to the next part, which is going to be more thinking skills, not just remembering skills. So we're going to ask that if you go into the chat, it might be helpful for you to answer some of our questions along the way. All right. Here's Amy.
Great. You will see BJ again. BJ, feel free to come on anytime if you want to tell us some more entertaining stories or show snacks. And also, if you have anything to say about some of these practice prompts. But it's been all of those things, all of those key terms, those places, those activities are really important. But it is the kind of thing. Hi, guys. Great to join you on stage instead of just in the chat. Though, I love hanging out with you guys in the chat. I really enjoy it. So we're going to do a couple of practice prompts. I'll go ahead and make sure that the captions are turned on for those who may be watching. The toggle captions. All right, let's look at it. Okay, so the first thing, we're going to go by different periods. The goal is that I put up a prompt and we talk our way through it. Think about what are some things that you would say in relation to this prompt? How might you contextualize this prompt? So you have, this is a great way to study. You have a general idea. You have like a long essay question, for example, and you're just trying to pull information out of your brain and try to make those associations, make those connections. By this point, you've watched so many videos. You have maybe read through a prep book. You have Googled a bunch of information. You have taken tests. You have done all of these different things. And so now it's time just to try to like practice making those connections in your brain, pulling out that information. So let's see what your brain comes up with. Little prompt practice. When you're given a prompt, a good strategy is to try to write a contextualization statement for about 2 to 3 sentences that has like a specific fact, right? What we love, what historians love are details, facts. Give us the vocab. Within one vocab, you should like unpack that and have more vocab. So you're also going to try to then move on from context and just brainstorming facts to writing a thesis. Eventually, you will have, as you write your essay, great topic sentences that mirror the prompt. There are no points for eloquence. There are no points for word choice. We are going to be redundant and clear, repetitive. That is like a history essay has lots of facts and is clearly structured. And do not do this in English class. You might not get a good grade. So, and then, but on history, on your history exams, then, you could score a lot of points just by knowing a lot and have a clearly structured and repetitive argument. And then, of course, another thing to do when you're writing is to think about additional pieces of evidence. So let's look at maybe some practice prompts. The topics that you might see, we're going to go by period. So first, let's start with the first time period in the AP World History curriculum. There's only 4 time periods. And it's important to remember that you don't need to know dates, but you do need to know like 4 chunks of time. You need to know like 4 groupings of time. The first one is 1200 to 1450. And then to think about what's the information in that time period that I need to know. The second time period will be 1450 to 1750. The third will be 1750 to 1900. And the fourth will be 1900 to the present. So in your mind, create these little like file folders, and then put information into those file folders so that on the day of the exam, when you see like an LEQ and it says 1200 to 1450, you can like mentally open that file folder and you have specific information that you have put there in that category. That may seem kind of strange, but it's important that like, that's how they ask the questions. That's how they organize the information, is in these chunks of time. So you have your 1200 to 1450 mental file folder. And in that, you could be asked about belief systems, the spread of belief systems. This is like a causation prompt. So it would be about causes and effects, what leads to the spread of belief systems, and what are the consequences of those belief systems. You could also talk about the spread of disease, the causes for the spread of disease, and the effects of the spread of disease. These are slides that are available to you, so you can go back if you would like and try to practice, thinking about these different types of questions. You could also talk about, you haven't been given the prompt yet. I'll give you the prompt in a second, but so you could talk about like different types of political organizations. Feudalism is in like decentralized states, and then can make those comparisons to more centralized bureaucracies like the Byzantines, the Islamic Empire, the Song or Mali. And then you have these other kinds of nomadic decentralized states like the Mongols and the Seljuks. And then you could also be asked to compare trade networks. So these are the main topics for 1200 to 1450. Cause and effect, like the spread of belief systems and the spread of disease because of these increasing networks of exchange, right? That's the whole idea of units 1 and 2, is that you have all these different players in the world and that they are interacting with each other through these networks of exchange, the Silk Roads, the Indian Ocean trade, trans-Saharan trade networks. And then, what are the causes and consequences of that? And then that second theme of comparison, okay, everyone, the global tapestry across the world are doing different things. What are some similarities and what are some differences in how they structure their states and how they adapt to their environments? And that's pretty much it for 1200 to 1450, is like pulling together those pieces. So don't worry about CCOT right now. All right, so let's look at it using pulling it together. Here's a prompt. Develop an argument that evaluates similar causes of centralized states between 1200 and 1450. Develop an argument that evaluates similar causes of centralized states between 1200 and 1450. Sometimes they will give you a region. They might say the Americas, they might say Asia, but sometimes they don't give you a region. They will always say develop an argument that evaluates. Sometimes it might say develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which the causes of centralized states were similar between 1200 and 1450. So you first identifying what the prompt is asking you to do is asking you to make a comparison, to make a to prove a similarity. It is asking you to evaluate cause. And then you're going to have to provide evidence. You know that it's units 1 and 2 because it says 1200 to 1450. And what is the theme? What is it that they want you to do? They want you to talk about politics because they say states. So they're going to want you to talk about different types of states. The difference between centralized and decentralized. So unpack that. It's political, right? So they want you to talk about how do different states rule over their regions? What are some key terms that come to mind? Yes, I see you guys start to mention specific examples like the Incas. So the first thing I do, what I have my students do when they get a prompt, think about who is there, what civilizations do you know between 1200 and 1450? You're not starting off with making an argument. You're starting off with pulling key terms out of your brain related to what civilizations do I know between 1200 and 1450? Because ultimately that's what they want. Who is there? Separate from what they're doing and what they look like and making a comparison, just like who exists between 1200 and 1450. And you guys are throwing out there Aztecs, and Incas. And, oh, I see some terms like tribute system and bureaucracy. You'll be able to pull that in. The Mongols. You see, there's some trade routes. Napoleon's outside the time period. Song China's in the time period. The Abbasids are in the time period. The Sultanates, the Ottomans are outside the time period. Okay, so you do not need to write about every single state that I just mentioned. But if you want to mentally go through your head, you see 1200 to 1450, mentally go through it. Who's in the Americas? The Aztecs, the Incans, the Mayans. Who is in Europe? There's a feudal system. Who's in the Middle East? The Abbasids, the Sultanates, eventually the Mongols with the Khanates. Who is in Africa? Mali, Ghana, the Swahili Coast, Great Zimbabwe. Who's in Southeast Asia? Those are the Hindu Buddhist kingdoms, like Majapahit. Who's in South Asia? In the north, you have the Delhi Sultanate, and then you have some Hindu kingdoms like Vijayanagar. In East Asia, the Song, the Yuan, the Ming. Japan is feudal. Who did we forget? So you have these, like, you don't need to write about all of these. What you are doing is just choosing, what do I know? Pick a region, and you need to make a comparison. You have to have two different things, right? So you're probably going to want to identify what kind of state? A centralized state, two centralized states, because you have to talk about a similarity in causes of centralization. So out of these centralized states, for causes, pick two. I think you guys would be fine, because even, okay, so you have like two centralized states. Those are going to be your units of comparison. Maybe think more intuitively. What makes for a strong state? You get the same amount of points if you do something really obvious than if you do something really random or weird or different, or not weird, just like special. Like if you do something really uncommon versus like, oh, everybody's going to write about the Mongols. Don't think like, well, everyone's going to write about the Mongols, so I don't want to write about the Mongols. That write about the thing that's like the most obvious, that you just know the most about. All right, so I have denser population due to better food, right? So food does lead to an increase in population, which leads to urbanization. I see things about the military. I see things about technological advancements. There was, religion legitimizing power. That's great. So that's good as well. Champa rice, food surplus, monumental architecture. And then Connor B coming up with a strong state has good wealth and economics. And that is, when in doubt, the answer is always trade. Strong states develop because they are located on access, like key points of trade. In order to have a strong state, you need to have money. And how you make money is through location on a trade route. So if you're thinking about like, I don't know anything about this prompt, the words make no sense to me. What is it asking you to do? It's asking you to say, what makes for a strong state? And that is going to be probably access to a trade route. A strong state is going to use religion, like the ruler is going to use religion to justify why they should be in charge and making everybody else build these like ridiculously huge but beautiful monuments. A strong state is going to also benefit from technological innovation, like with Champa rice, new foods under the Song dynasty. A strong state often sponsors commerce, right? They want to make more money, so that they will invest in infrastructure like the Song Grand Canal, for example. You guys all have a lot of great ideas. Yes, trade is almost always the answer. And then what leads to trade is usually tech, right? Money makes the world go round. Money is key to everything that's happening politically. But a lot of times, who's making the money is who has access to the latest and greatest technology, like Elon Musk. So these are the things. These are you already know these. This is just truth. This is just capital T truth. This is how the world works. Now you just got to plug in the historical knowledge. For example, the Song dynasty is a centralized bureaucracy that becomes very wealthy because of access to trade routes. And then you could talk about the things that they're doing. And then similarly, who I like to talk about for this time period is Mansa Musa of Mali. The Mali Empire is a strong centralized state in West Africa, and they also get really wealthy and centralized through access to trans-Saharan trade routes. So both of them are going to become wealthy, centralized states that are able to rule over these big empires because location and access to these growing, expanding trade routes in the 1200 to 1450. And oh no, I wouldn't say the Mongols are a good example of a centralized state. I was just saying that Mongols are, so a good point, which is actually the first brainstorming process that you should do is think about who exists in 1200 to 1450. And then from there, like go to the next level. Okay, so now I know like what states I'm working with, which ones can I pull out that are the centralized states, because you're looking for similarity. So that's a really good point. You don't, not all of the states that were mentioned fit the prompt, but one way that students don't often get the prompt is because they say something outside the time period. So the first thing you need to do is like open up your file folder mentally and think about what states exist in this particular time period, and then filter from there into centralized states. And then there's a variety of different comparisons you can make within that, but I think that's a really good point. Now, the Mongols are special though, in some sense, because what do the Mongols do? The Mongols map themselves onto pre-existing empires. So the Mongols are nomadic and they conquer a bunch of places. But then the Khanates are these Mongol successor states that basically map themselves onto whatever came before. So wouldn't you say the Yuan dynasty is centralized? I mean, they have the same bureaucratic structure as the Song dynasty. The Mongols come in, they conquer. Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, takes over, declares the Yuan dynasty. They get rid of the civil service exam only because they don't want the Han Chinese staffing the bureaucracy, but they just bring in different people. They bring in the Central Asians. So the Mongols are interesting because in some ways the Mongols are centralized or decentralized depending on which civilization they map themselves onto. So I think that's always good to, an interesting thing about the Mongols. So that's why they have their own unit. There's like unit 1, the global tapestry, everything in the world. And then unit 2, it's like a big, it's like trade plus Mongols. It's pretty important. All right, so let's do another one and see what we can do with the next time period. So again, you just like see a prompt and you brainstorm. All right, I'm gonna think about, what do I know about this time period? Even before you go into your thesis statement, what do I know about this time period? What information, how do I think through this prompt? Because I think that's a big part of it. Now we're in 1450 to 1750, and that is the early modern period, unit 3 and unit 4. Unit 3, land-based empires, has been a real popular topic for a lot of teachers and students who are predicting like possible DBQ prompts. Unit 3 is just 4 empires, the Ottomans, Safavids, Mughals, and Qing, these really big land-based empires that become really large over land because they have modern gunpowder militaries. So like they have mega cannons that can siege cities and take over a bunch of territory. So you have basically like a belt of empires, the Ottomans, the Safavids, the Mughals, and the Qing that control just like all of the territory of Eurasia, minus, Western Europe. And and then unit 4, which happens also in this time period, are the maritime empires. Students are usually more familiar with those, like Spain and England, coming into North America, Jamestown, 1607, America. So you have your 5 big maritime empires in Europe, the British, the French, the Portuguese, the Spanish, and the Dutch. And then you have new trade routes related to the opening up of the Atlantic. So 2 hemispheres previously isolated for tens of thousands of years connected. That creates all sorts of effects. And then, of course, the Pacific route, where there is a silver trade, where you have silver from the Americas going across the Pacific into Asia. So there's a lot of topics here. And last year, there was an SAQ related to the Columbian Exchange, causes and effects. And students did very well on that, I think. And it's not just like, what is it, but it's what led to it and what was its effect. Other types of causation prompts you could get relate to labor systems. You guys, I heard you talking earlier about the Mita system, and That's really great that it seems like you guys have a good sense of that. There is an extra history video series. If you guys like the Extra Credits YouTube channel, there's one on the Incans and the Mita, which I think is really good. All right, and then possible comparison topics could be the effects of the Columbian Exchange. NW stands for New World, OW stands for Old World, and basically that one of the effects of the Columbian Exchange was just that there was a huge population decrease in the Americas because of disease, and a corresponding population increase everywhere else. Africa, Asia, Europe, corn and potatoes, that's like high calories. And then so Europeans in the world, some sorts of like comparisons between the different empires. So if your big five, like could you compare their different types of settlements? Could you compare the different empires? You don't need to write the essay right now in your head. Just think about these topics. Just think about them. Like if you could see them, think about how you might answer them. Other types of comparisons are just strategies of rule. BJ talked a lot about this, different types of trade, and the impact of Christianity in Latin America compared to Asia. Different African responses to the arrival of Europeans. That's something that we talked about in our earlier crams. So, and again, don't worry about CCOT for now. I'm going to kick that to BJ a little bit later. So we're doing just like, thinking about causation and comparison right now. So 1450 to 1750, develop an argument that evaluates different effects of interconnectivity between 1450 and 1750. Two things. One, this would probably say develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which the effects of interconnectivity were different between 1450 and 1750. And that evaluates the extent to which is just the degrees to which something happened. And for interconnectivity, the College Board uses a couple of different words. They'll say like networks of exchange. Unit 4 is called transoceanic interconnections, which is where this word really comes from. Instead of saying age of exploration, they had to say transoceanic interconnections. So let's look at what they're doing here. You need to find evidence. So you're evaluating the extent to which something is happening and providing evidence. What for the theme here, it is interconnectivity. So it's going to be about those networks of exchange. And you are looking for different effects. So this is 1450 to 1750, units 3 and 4. And you are looking for effects. Let me see what you guys come up with. Just start brainstorming. All right, so I see you guys saying the spread of technology, like gunpowder. An interesting thing about gunpowder is the technology of gunpowder spreads in an earlier period, but it lays the foundation for these. And so that would be great contextualization that because of the Mongol conquest, you have the spread of gunpowder technology, which is going to lead to these new empires in units 3 and units 4, using that, creating their modern militaries, their gunpowder militaries that are able to expand and conquer more territories. So I think the spread of gunpowder is great contextualization. Anytime you get a prompt that's like going to be talking about the spread of empire. So there's a lot of good stuff about also trade, right? Like the opening up of the Atlantic, an effect of 2 hemispheres coming together, and the opening up of the Atlantic, mentioning slavery. Oh, great. Yes, Harley, you could talk about the Columbian Exchange. The spread of religion. I mean, that really is such an important theme. Like the entire Western Hemisphere by 1700 is pretty much Christian because of like Latin America. Well, because of European expansion, European colonization of the Americas. But not just everybody converts, but they also keep doing the things that they did before. So you have new syncretic forms of religion as well. I always think you should throw in some culture like food, like rice and okra, and new languages like Creole. Like there's a real creation of new cultural intermixing and cultural spreads that happen because of this new interconnection. So the casta system, nice. Actually, yeah, that's great. One thing the College Board does mention in the curriculum is the comparison between the Creoles in the caste system as representing a new kind of elites, and the Manchu in the Qing dynasty, because the Manchu are an ethnic group. So they're like the new elites in town in China when they come in and take over the Ming. Just like in Europe, in colonial Spain, the Creoles, who are the European descendants, they're American born, but they're Spanish, essentially, born in America, that they're the new elites in town. So both of those are kind of like changes. You got some new elites ruling over this territory that didn't before. So, all right, so the next one, so moving on to the next period. Contextualization thesis. All right, this one's going to be a little bit different. You are going to, from 1750 to 1900, I think this is something that you're going to debate. For each of the following slides, you're going to enter the chat, and some of you are already there. Hi. Topics will include what is the best fact to support a statement on this slide, which of the statements on the slides best defines the era, and which of the statements on the slide least defines the era. So the purpose of this exercise is to like sift through the information to think about, what do I know? What's a fact that I can use to support something I see on the slide? What, out of all the things that are on the slide that kind of like preview the era, all these different things going on, what is the one thing I think is the most important? What is the most important thing going on in this time period? And then what do you think is like, why is that even on the slide? I don't even need to know that for the exam. So let's look at it. All right, so for the first one, we're now in period 3, which is units 5 and 6, 1750 to 1900. So here are some possible topics for causation. Imperialism. Causes, new markets and materials, justified by social Darwinism. Effects, increased racism, unequal development, and migrations. Industrialization, causes, geography, private wealth, the need to keep up. Effects, working class, a new class is created, the factory system, militarization. Revolutions. I also heard that there's some predictions that the revolutions could be a big topic this year. So the Atlantic revolutions. The causes, the Enlightenment, mercantilism or resistance to mercantilism, poor conditions like on slave plantations, for example, in Haiti, exploitative practices. Effects, independence, the creation of republics, new governments, civil war. So out of all these things, if you were going to pick from 1750 to 1900, what do you think is...
I'm going to give an example of what I'm thinking.
I think this was sort of your vision for the debate too, so I'll let you come.
Well, it's more of like, get in the chat, everybody, but I'm like, if I had to sit there and say, give me an example of social Darwinism, I would say, just kind of connecting things, I taught about white man's burden. White man's burden was justifying or legitimizing how countries like the United States were choosing to go around the world to, quote unquote, civilize other people. And I think that that is a piece of evidence to support social Darwinism, that people are fit to survive, some are not. And it's the burden of those that are fit, white man's burden, to take care of what they need to, and in a very paternalistic way. So that's me breaking down just one word. Can anybody give another piece of evidence for anything else on that page that you think is by far a great piece of evidence? Paternalism is to act like paternal. To act paternal is to act like a parent. Fatherly, to act paternally is, and then there's maternal, motherly. So to be paternal is to treat like other countries like they're your kids, which can be a lot of the condensation. I see Berlin Conference. Lots of you love the Latin American Revolution. Ooh, where would we, Praveen, where would we use joint stock company? Where does that link to? Go ahead and use that in the chat, Praveen. What does the joint stock company best connect with? Maybe it'd be best if you guys would go into the chat with more than just a word, but connect the word or the evidence to something on this page. Julian got some good stuff going on there. I love that. So, Sophie, what we're trying to do is find a piece of evidence and say how it describes successfully one of the words on the screen. Thanks, Zoe. Ooh, wait, somebody just said it. Just somebody. Sophia did a great job connecting joint stock companies to capitalism. Raisa links imperialism to industrialization. Douglas, I wonder what spheres of influence connects to. I don't get a connection. I see the words sphere of influence, but does that connect to civil war? Does that connect to geography? What does that connect to? Feel free to jot that down. Ava, you're going to have to Google white man's burden. Read the first stanza, you'll be good. It's a poem. Joint stock companies to social Darwinism? Oh, I don't know about that, Amy. Joint stock companies to social Darwinism. I mean, joint stock companies did allow English businesses, Spanish businesses to go abroad and take from others, indigenous people and natives, land for themselves. So I can see that being paternalistic.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you said social. There was mention of joint stock companies in this time period, but this time period, this isn't really joint stock companies is really the previous time period. So I just didn't want them to associate like 1750 to 1900 with the expansion of joint stock companies, because this is really when they're falling out of favor and they're going to be replaced by direct colonial control. But it is an important innovation in the previous time period. So I was just trying to, it's hard in the chat to keep up, but yeah.
Here's the next one. If you had to select one word on all of this slide that best defines this era, what is the word and why? This is going to be a sentence or two. So select the one word. I would probably select social Darwinism. That's my take. But I'll let somebody else explain why. Gupta, you need to say why, though. Enlightenment, I need to know why, Hanil. Social Darwinism would be 1750 to 1900, and some would still say it's around today, of course. I love the idea of the Enlightenment. I think that's wonderful. However, I smirk. The Enlightenment gives legitimacy to revolutions. And some of those revolutions, follow me, bring independence and democracy to some people who then use their Enlightenment democracy to then feel justified, legitimized in taking over others. So imagine you think enlightenment sounds good, but the enlightenment of English thinkers was then used so the English could subjugate the Indians and others. So this is a world history class. Did the people of China, India, South Africa benefit from Enlightenment ideals between 1750 and 1900, or did they suffer the wrath of those? Wow, that got dark real fast. But I love your thinking. All right. The goal of this activity is to get you to look at the slide, think about the slide, and chat about the slide. If I could turn you all on the mic, I would, but there are 341 of you. All right, why don't we go try the next slide, Dr. Posa? Let's see what the next slide is going to bring us. So this is a comparison slide. It's going to ask you to compare causes and effects of different revolutions, and it's going to ask you to compare effects on Africa and Asia. Now, listen, everybody knows on this call that this is as simplified as possible. But let's go back to the discussion rules. Find one word and give evidence of it. So Latin America, social inequalities, give me some definition of that or evidence of that. If you know American history and you know unfair taxes, give me evidence of that. So you're just going to try to find evidence, vocab that you can match. Now, what does Costa match with, though? I don't think we should be using one-word responses here. Thank you, Lauren. Lauren gets my humor. Basically, everybody find a term or terms on this page and think of some evidence from your prior knowledge. Now, Rusham brings up the Stamp Act, I believe, to connect to unfair taxes of the American Revolution.
Some of my students are trying to manifest this DBQ on revolutions. I don't know how it works. If only they can get a DBQ on the revolutions.
Thanks, Ellie. Thanks, Kylie. Thanks, Cece. Love the story of Robespierre, but do not do it justice in AP World. AP Euro, they do the French Revolution. All right, so let's go to the next question. The next question on that slide earlier was, which one of these pieces of knowledge best defines this era? So look through this slide. Which one, when you think of 1750 to 1900, which best defines this era? And then explain it. Let them eat cake. Not said, but sounds nice. Or not nice. Repressive labor systems, racism, freedom. Hello, freedom for some. Yes, opposing political views, which is kind of the beauty of this time period, is between 1750 and 1900, a variety of opposing political and economic and social beliefs emerge, which makes the world more complicated, thus the 1900s, thus America in 2023. And that's good. I mean, I like complexity. Not on the AP test, but I like complexity. A lot of you are sitting on inequality. And none of these revolutions fix almost any of the problems. I mean, Haiti still struggles today. French Revolution led to Napoleon, not extremely a revolutionary figure in terms of immediate democracy and social reforms. Boo unicorns. Okay. Let's see what we can do next. Amy, we do want to save time for that quiz that Amanda built for us too. So let's go ahead and give a review of this slide. These are possible topics between 1750 and 1900 in terms of a CCOT. The CCOT talks about change and continuity. What are some distinct changes and what are distinct continuities? So on this slide, I'm going to go with the opposite of what we've been doing. So slow down for the directions. Which of the pieces of vocab on this slide between changes and continuities do you think matters least and why? Which one do you think has the least impact and why? Oh, we have a quiz for you, but we got to do this slide first. I'm enjoying the comments you're making. I would say that the rise of the middle class only exists for a very small number of people. For those who played the urban game in their classrooms, we are talking about an extreme small percentage that would have existed with a middle class. And that would only have been in many Western states, parts of Russia, parts of maybe Latin America. But we're not talking a dramatic middle class. Today, especially in the West, we think of the middle class as this booming group that has political, economic, and social power. 100 years ago, no, it did. It did not. It did not move mountains. Thank you. All right. I think they are ready to move on to our next topic. I think we're getting close to a quiz, but let's see what we can do to get there.
One quick thing I wanted to mention is that sometimes things could be argued as a continuity or a change. So you might see something on there and think to yourself, so it's about how you argue it. It's about your reasoning. Like, for example, the situation for women during this time period, they were advocating for a lot of change, right? With the social reform movements, they didn't get much change. They didn't get political rights. That failed, right? They're the suffragists. They're trying to push for change, Seneca Falls Convention, and they don't get it. Instead, things get worse in some ways because middle class women are forced into the home with the cult of domesticity. This whole idea that like women, middle class women have, upper class women have to define themselves by being in the home. And then working class women are forced into the factory in these horrible conditions. So you could argue that, yeah, patriarchy is a continuity, as in like women are still have less social status than men. But a change might be that the conditions, their lower social status, that changes. It's a continuity that it's low, but you could also just talk about the way the industrialization changed that for them in terms of making it worse. That like public sphere and private sphere, and the way in which working class women were forced into outside of the home into really horrible conditions, and middle class women were like confined to the home. And in both of those situations, that's a change. So a lot of times it's how you argue it rather than the fact itself. So whatever makes sense to you, just do that. Like argue what makes sense to you. And you should know things about women. All right, so we're at the last slide, 1900 to today for the last one. And then we have our quiz, is that right?
Yeah, so I thought maybe we can go through some of these. Maybe we'll skip this slide, but
Okay.
we'll go through each of these slides, and that'll get them ready for that practice quiz at the end. So maybe you take a slide, I'll take a slide, we'll get through the 1900s, and then we'll have our quiz.
All right, sounds good. Do you want me to do this first one?
If you would like to, it's up to you.
All right, sure. Yeah, that sounds good. So for this particular topic for causation, the world wars, I think most students are pretty familiar with them in terms of causes and effects. So let's do the decolonization part. Go ahead and identify what are some pieces of evidence that you would use in order to talk about, to provide a cause, you know, to support one of the ideas of like the causes for decolonization. Like, yeah, self-determination, democracy, but what does that mean? Give me some key terms. Or in terms of effects, right? Name some states that are created. Name what is the actual story of decolonization. All right, BJ, I'm having some chat problems. Can you come back, please? I'm sorry. This is how it goes. I can't access the chat.
Oh.
All right. Well, some things that came to mind, and I don't know.
They're hitting it up a lot. Definitely about India. Some are referencing things that might have happened a little bit before, such as the Berlin Conference, but that's good contextualization. But yeah, a lot of them are hitting Pakistan and India a lot.
Yeah. So one thing you want to point out, or one thing you should say, is decolonization. You could talk about it as beginning, sort of in the early stages after World War I, but really hitting full speed after World War II. Use the world wars to contextualize decolonization in terms of causation. You know, that there were colonized people who were fighting in these wars, fighting for freedom abroad, yet deprived of freedom at home. 1 million Indians come home after fighting in World War II. They fought in World War I, and they're organizing. So it's great if you talk about the local organizing in terms of like the INC and Gandhi, but also talk about the bigger picture, the picture of the world wars, which weakened these empires and created an opening for these nationalist leaders who had been already organizing, like Gandhi in the interwar period, to kind of take advantage of that weakness and push their way toward independence. Some of them, you might get a question about the degrees to which they were violent or nonviolent, negotiated or had violent resistance. But all right, so that's good. I would know at least one story, know a story of decolonization.
Yeah, I'm gonna, in the chat, a video of mine that I made during COVID. I believe that one of the best stories, it sounds horrible, to use in the 1900s is the story of Vietnam. You got Vietnam fighting for independence from the French, then fighting for the United States to leave. They fall into a period of civil war. They pull between what some would say capitalism and socialism. I would rather say between the United States and the Cold War powers. Like, I wouldn't sit there and say the United States was trying to create a democratic, capitalistic South Vietnam, because they were quite autocratic. And that's part of the problem story, is how messy it is to become decolonized in the era of the Cold War. So I have a 20-minute video. You should be going to bed soon, but it just goes over the Vietnam War, and you can use it. You have a nationalist, that is Ho Chi Minh. You have a communist, that's Ho Chi Minh. So like, you get to use him in multiple ways. And then you could, of course, compare the approach of Ho Chi Minh and what happened in Vietnam versus the nonviolent civil disobedience of Mohandas Gandhi. So now you have a contrasting situation. So I love the Vietnam War for AP World use.
Yeah, great. That's great. That's great. That does like talk about how not just it comes out of World War II, and Japan had occupied Vietnam, and then the French tried to come back in, but also the context of the Cold War. So that's awesome. Yes, they're asking for that link. Oh, it's right there. Great. Okay, so before you go to bed, you can watch that. But now, let's see, moving into finishing up with this exercise, some comparisons between like communism in China and the Soviet Union. Do you want to take this one, BJ?
I mean, in both places, we are going to see that they attempt to create 5-year plans. They started that back with Lenin, and they will do that with Mao. A 5-year plan is a good example of a planned economy. A planned economy is when the government sets up quotas, sets up goals, sets up potentials, and then backfills what it needs to do, creates the factories, creates the roads. All of this is being done by the government. The most famous or infamous 5-year plan was Mao Zedong's second 5-year plan, the Great Leap Forward, which epically failed. He wanted people living on communes, growing their own food, while also producing steel for government use. They wanted the steel from the Great Leap Forward for government use and for government sale. The steel was horrible, the harvest wasn't grown and harvested, and then they fell into famine. Now you have capitalism, where you are allowing private industry to build the roads and private industry to have the factories. But the problem there is you might still have famine and death, because it's unbalanced growth. The elite thrive while others don't, and slowly emerging middle classes do develop. But I'm going on to the second bullet there. Some middle classes are created in a capitalist state by government action. We have the New Deal that helped prop up a growing middle class after the Great Depression. We have the Federal Highway Act under Eisenhower. We have the GI Bill of Rights. So these are very Amero-centric topics, but they're all government actions supporting economic growth, which shows that capitalist states still have regulations. When I think of a difference between China and the Soviet Union, I would never look at them as being the same. They both did have collectivization, meaning government running the agriculture, putting farms together, sharing materials together, government saying you'll plant this there, you'll work there. But I would also then say that Mao Zedong was more about rural peasants, where Lenin was more about urban development, industrial development. And that's why in many ways the Soviet Union led in the 50s and 60s in industry, and China truly lagged behind. I think that's a lot there. I'm reading everybody's chat now. All right, what's our next slide?
I think this is our last one. I know that they are craving some music, some of that, fiveable music. And, there's a lot of change. If you were to get a question about 1900 to the present, there is a lot of things that you could say. One thing I did want to mention is you'll see social movements, the expansion of rights-based discourses. So that one going all the way from the Enlightenment. We talk a lot about rights now. That is a thing that didn't always exist. It's a concept in history. Enlightenment thinkers said that individuals have rights. So that becomes expanded to more and more people from 1750 to 1900, and then 1900 to the present, more and more people after that. And that's sort of one of the big themes as well, is now you have the United Nations, which has a Declaration of Human Rights. So there's a lot that you could talk about when it comes to 1900 to the present. These are just some of the themes. The other thing is the global balance of power. Like, well, who is the most powerful? We start off in 1900 with like Britain. It's like the sun never sets on Britain. And then World War I and World War II happens, right? So things start to shift. The global balance of power shifts with the fall of some empires. There's some exchange of territories. And then World War II, those old empires crumble. Now you just have the United States and the Soviet Union. And the Cold War officially ends in 1991. But I want you guys to write in your essays when you talk about the Cold War, did the Cold War end? Or are we just still doing the same old battle between United States and Russia? There's NATO still. Everybody's like, India's trying to stay out of it. It's like we're still in the Cold War in some ways. So, anyway. All right. Well, let's go ahead. You've been with us for almost 15 hours. We appreciate it. We're here for you. We're all in this together. It's been quite an experience. We have bonded over the last week of like 15 hours of crams. So let's go ahead and move into the quiz. What do you think, BJ?
Yeah, I'm bringing up the quiz as we speak.
So
I can share it. I do want to make a reminder that there is a survey like every other night at the bottom of the screen. We know that some of you are going to veer off and drift off into bed. So we want to remind you to fill out that survey. That survey means a lot to Fiveable and to Amy and I. All right, so here we go. This is going to be our last time listening to Samosa, which for some of you you'll be very sad. I will go ahead and drop that link. Ready with a lot of y'all. Let's put it up for the next person. All right, we're slowing down. What is one common cause of the development of feudalism in both Europe and Japan? Great question. Great theme. Nine 37. All right, we're gonna go ahead and reveal. Look at that. Good job. B, 76. So I would liken that a weak central government should be connected to feudalism because feudalism was kind of like a social, quasi-political order. The difference among various trade networks. Hello? 7. All right, time to reveal. Type of goods exported. So, all of them lead to commercial improvements, diffusion of stuff, and new trading cities. So the big difference is, what did they move along them? If you're an emperor, you need to cut taxes. You're not going to use your own people. Why not enlist some locals on the yard? Seems like a good idea. Where are you? There are zamindars. I emote a lot. All right, and you reveal 3, 2, 1. The Mughal Empire, and it's okay. I think zamindar is one of those words not every teacher teaches, and because it seems that a lot of kids don't remember it. But we're telling you tonight, know what a zamindar is. The tax collecting of the Mughals helps centralize the authority. It's a way to consolidate power. Which of the following was not the labor system used in the Americas? Reveal answer. And we have serfdom. Definitely not. Chattel slavery is where you own humans. Indentured servitude was a cheap way for people of Western Europe sometimes to get to the Americas. And Mita system was Incan and then adopted by the Spanish. Next, the Industrial Revolution marked a dramatic change in, go for it. How can we answer the question if we don't have samasa? Samasa. I don't know. It's like we're just gonna go home. I got it turned up all the way. It's gonna come back. Samasa. We lost the rights to it. All right. We want to answer this question just so we can get to the next question. Reveal. The Industrial Revolution marked a dramatic change in the way products were made. Now, based off of that, a lot of things happened, but a direct effect would be by the way products are made. Next question. Please come back. What was the long-term effects of the Boxer Rebellion in China? Enter chat. What is the Boxer Rebellion? It's a good one to know. All right, I hear you. Motivation 100. Is that how it goes? Do. Excellent. All right, I'm going to let like 12 more people go. I lied. 17. There. Real answer. It weakened the Qing dynasty and hastened its downfall. I'm going to add to that. The Qing were the Manchu dynasty, and Empress Dowager had to allow foreign powers to come into the harbors of China and help squash an internal rebellion happening in China. So yeah, that shows that the Manchu dynasty, the Qing dynasty, was on its last leg. Next question. All the following led directly or indirectly to the Green Revolution. Next. Turn it up. All right, reveal answer. Global warming. So all the following led directly or indirectly to the Green Revolution except. So we got fertilizers, we got economic growth rates, and we got new farming techniques. All of that is connected to the Green Revolution. Now, yes, global warming relates to the environment, but not the Green Revolution. Only a few more to go. Which of the following was not a cause of the Cold War? Not. Reveal answer. The clash of ideologies that resulted in the Korean War. So you can't talk about a cause of the Cold War because the Cold War started before the Korean War. I don't know if that actually makes a lot of sense. Let's go to the next one. The terms Palm Spring and Velvet Revolution are associated with popular responses to which of the following. This is very, very rarely covered, but I think it's healthy to try it out. Feel free to take a second, check your phone for an answer. Forty of you have got it, or at least got it. And reveal. Soviet communist influence. So what we need to understand is that the United States did not alone by itself in the world take down the evil Soviet Union. Eastern Europe was rising up in drips and drabs, trying to peel back the Iron Curtain. Good job. Last one, I believe. Which of the following statements is true about the brain drain? Oh, I love that one. Oh, there's nothing I can do to fast it now. It just takes a little hiatus, a little break. Brain drain. Brain drain. It's kind of how you feel right now. So I'm going to answer it. Reveal. It usually occurs in developing countries where they lose people to developed countries. Here it is. What happens in places, it goes on in Africa and Asia. It definitely went on in China, where people would get to a certain age, earn middle-class success in Asia, in like China, but then go off to college and stay in the United States. So what was happening is the better, the educated, the elite would leave and not necessarily bring back to Africa, to China, or wherever success. Like they weren't keeping their own. So that was a challenge. All right. That's the brain drain. I don't teach that in my class, by the way. You can't teach everything. Dare to omit. All right. I'm going to stop sharing this. Good job, everybody. Very good job. And now we're going to go ahead and share that slideshow. And we're just going to kind of wrap things up tonight. I'll hit slideshow. And as we know, I have to hit the dots, captions, toggle. All right. So I'll move myself to the left. Nope. I'm going to move myself to the left. And I'm going to invite Amy back here in a second whenever she wants. I just wanted to mention, we're not going to be able to cover everything that is in this slideshow. So we had a couple extra slides Amy put together. I'll let Amy go ahead and talk about them and how they could be used, and then we'll come together with some final tips. So I'll let Amy cover this.
Yeah, and I think it would be good actually to maybe bring the students on the stage like we did last night for some of those final tips and tricks, like day of, night of, some of the things to help you get ready. I put this into the slideshow so that you guys can have it as a study tool, but it's not anything that, it's nothing we're going to go over. But what I wanted to do was just give you like, if you wanted a short summary. So here, I guess you have it actually shared.
I can just,
but it's just an overview by period of each region. I don't know if you want to scroll through it a little bit.
Yeah,
so there's the Americas, and it's a focus on change. So summary of the Americas, summary of Europe, summary of Africa, period 1 through 4. So period 1, of course, 1200 to 1450, and then all the way to the present, just some general trends in each of the regions. So just something to look at if you want a little cheat sheet.
Not literally.
Everything you need to know and eat by region.
And the wind down. All right. So some final tips. I'm going to say that Amy and I are just going to go back and forth here, and because we've both been doing this for a while. For the multiple choice, you need to read the source info first. If there's a title and then there's an author and you see a date, read that first. Then you read the questions. Then you read the document. Please do not try to read the whole document without reading the questions. Obviously, process of elimination is a skill all of you have been using since you first did your first multiple choice test, probably sadly in first grade. You don't want to skip any, and you don't want to not guess on any. So fill it in, move on, fill it in, move on. I'll let Amy go to the next one.
All right, so for the short answer question, make sure that you read the source information, because they're not just going to be asking, you will have a short answer question that 2 of them have a prompt. 2 of them have some sort of, not a prompt, a stimulus. So you might see a passage, you might see an image. The first thing you should think about or look at is just what time period is it? What place is it? What do I know about this generally? Because don't get too distracted by the source. The source represents an idea or a trend that you know. So you just want to look at the source line. You're going to have manage your time. You have about 13 minutes per question. You have 3 of them, and you have 40 minutes to do 3 questions. Stay in the box and label A, B, and C. Just write 3 sentences per subpoint. You'll be fine. And remember, vocab, vocab, vocab.
Some thoughts about the DBQ, which you can't really rush, but at the end of the day, take your time, write your thesis as thoughtfully as possible. You're allowed to write your thesis early on and at the end. Try to group your documents. You don't have to, but try to, because it allows you to lump them together, and it's faster to write that way. Don't quote. AP readers don't need it, so you don't need to write it. I always ask my students to do a variety of HIPs, at least 3 or 4, use all 7 documents, and make sure you try to focus on that prompt. The prompt is goal. You don't want to talk about things that are not in the prompt. Today, I had a student walk in, Mr. Dranby, I don't get contextualization. I've struggled on it every time. And I said to this kid, he's a smart kid. I said, then don't do it tomorrow. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, just don't do it. Like, you don't have to get contextualization to do well on it. If you can't get outside evidence, then don't try it. Go spend more time on your sourcing, your hipping, doing 7 documents. If you think you're going to do all 7 documents and all HIPs and everything, and you're going to get a 12 out of 7, you're mistaken. So do what you can and move forward. I'll let Amy cover the LEQ.
All right. Well, you guys, it's very similar to the DBQ. It's an argument essay. You know how to write a thesis. You know how to do context. In the DBQ, you do the exact same thing in the LEQ. And you've already got 2 out of 6 points. You throw in some vocab, lots and lots of vocab, key terms. That's what we love as your AP readers. We love those facts, that specific vocab. And just try to, as you're name dropping, try to do a little bit of explanation. Not just after you use a vocab term, say words like because, due to, therefore. That'll sort of like force you to do a little bit of the reasoning and analysis to connect it back to your argument. You have an argument, you use the vocab, explain it, and you got it. So I think you guys have done a really great job. I've really enjoyed, seeing all of your comments in the chats, and you're ready to go. You just need to, maybe review a few slides of those general overview slides. You got your 5-able cheat sheets. I know that my students have been using those, really using all of those 5-able resources and pouring over them. And so now it's a good night's sleep, a good breakfast. Let's see what the final poll results were for the breakfast here. And it looks like most people are going to have something light, maybe fruit. A good solid 30% are going to have like a heavy bacon and egg breakfast. Hopefully you can handle that. And yeah, so a few don't eat breakfast. I think the idea is you do whatever you would normally do. Don't switch it up too much.
Calories help. So, man, I don't believe it's over. 15
yes,
hours.
We have a surprise appearance from our founder. Yay,
I'm just like sitting here giggling with the chat. Y'all, I'm so stoked. What a fun night. I love AP World. Obviously, this is the one that I've spent the most time with. And so watching y'all review all this content is taking me way back. I feel like, I don't know, I'm just excited. I'm just super stoked. I just wanted to give one quick little pep talk too. I don't know if the students all have anything to say too, but honestly, y'all, when you're taking the test tomorrow, just try to relax, at the end of the day, it's one day, it's one test. You're going to get a score from College Board that is only going to tell you one thing. It's going to tell you how you did on this test on this one day. It doesn't say anything about your self-worth, your future, your past, your present. It says nothing else. It just says, with this set of questions, with this rubric, on this day, this is how you did. That's it. So try to keep that in mind. It's like, I'm rooting for you. We're all rooting for you. But really what I want you to do is walk away from the test just feeling good about yourself. Feel good about what you just did. You spent 15 hours studying. More than that, you spent all year taking AP. For many of you, it's your first one. This one's a really hard one, So be proud of what you've done and don't let anything that happens on the actual test or the score that comes after it take that away from you. It can't. It is what it is. So keep that in mind and you're going to be fine. It's all in your hands. That's my actual biggest advice. I know in the chat I said my other biggest advice is answer the damn question. Just answer the question. Sounds so easy. Any other last advice?
I've had students, like my best student that I've ever taught. She was a great Model UNer and she was a great APer. She loved it. She drank the Kool-Aid. She thought it was the coolest class. She got a 4, which a lot of you are saying is good, but to her it was a letdown. She's a professor now. I've had one student, she got a 2, and she is getting her doctorate this it was either this summer or it was going to be September. So like, you can think you're perfect, but you get a 4, but you could also get a 2 and say, well, I don't do well at this stuff, and then go on and become a professor and get your PhD. So don't define yourself by the stupid test. No, it's not a stupid test. It made you work hard. That's why I teach AP World. It makes kids, it makes me all work the hardest we can do. The final outcome is not what is important. It's the process that got you here. And this is what you're going to take to 11th and 12th in college is the process. You're not going to remember Akbar the Great.
Oh, you might. There'll be one trivia night someday in your 30s where you're like, oh, I knew this from AP World. Thank you, student hosts, teacher hosts, everybody. This has just been really awesome. One also reminder, please fill out the survey. We have been gathering all of this data, the whole time, because we want to see how much this is, how you feel, So please fill it out. I want to see how many we can get tonight on the last night.
That'd be great.
Any last tips, students? Deb, promise?
Yeah, you guys got this. I'm so proud. Just the fact that you were all like here, putting in the work, taking the time, like, I know you're going to do amazing. On the test, don't stress. If you don't know something, just put what you think you can do. And your first guess is probably right. You got this.
That's a really good tip.
Thanks.
Anything else?
I just want to say, I feel like everybody here has went so far since like the beginning of the night, or even people that like joined in last minute. Like you guys have put more than enough effort into this, and I believe in all of y'all's capabilities. Like I believe every single one of y'all can get more than a 3, probably even a 5. You guys just need to believe in yourselves, and that's all that matters. And you're gonna go into that test tomorrow. You're gonna own it, and you're gonna feel proud afterwards.
This is sadder than the last day of school. I feel like we know everybody here. Can I get a big round of applause in the chat where you can all thank your hosts, please? They've done so much work to support you in the Cram Hub, all the slides, the review packet, the key, being here every night, answering all your questions. Please thank them on your way out and keep them in mind tomorrow on your test. We're going to send you a note tomorrow after the test as well, just to make sure that to get a sense of how it went. And then once the essays drop in a few days, we'll also send a note too, so you can see them after the fact. I wish I had them before.
I'm excited for you all. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much, Amanda, for giving them this opportunity and us this opportunity to work with you. It's been a blast.
Woo! Bye.